Hello and welcome to a quick analysis on Matt Walsh's documentary strategy. So, I'm just going to jump right in. In the last video that we analyzed sex versus gender, and we looked at Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman, and specifically one clip in that to kind of understand the differences. And from his visit to a university, we get the explanation from a professor that sex is, our biological differences, and gender is more of a social construct. And from what you can see, there are different little social aspects that make up your gender, and we can see that there's gender fluidity because what make up men and women uh, isn't necessarily set in stone. So the reason I made that video was to respond to an argument saying uh, trans people and pro-trans people are illogical because they believe XY equals XX. And we got this explanation to understand, well, actually, no, that's not what pro-trans or trans people believe. Uh, they understand there are biological differences, but what they're saying is that there are differences in gender as a social construct, and a person can actually be gender fluid. So it seemed like we were all in agreement. Yes, we all live in reality where people are born with a certain sex, male, female, maybe even something else, maybe intersex. And it seemed like everyone was on the same page. Even right here, we've got a clip of Ben Shapiro, who actually, I'm pretty sure he's like the founder of the Daily Wire, or just very involved, giving us kind of showing that he's on the same page as well.
Best thing for the person is for the person they can't change what they're thinking. There's no way for them to get out of it. They want to change their body so they feel that it is more in line with what they're thinking. More power to them. That's their problem. And as I've said before, by the way, I've said this 1,000 times and everybody on the left automatically ignores it, of course. I've said that if I were in a room with a transgender person having dinner with that person, I wouldn't go out of my way to call them by their biological sex. Because it's rude.
So that statement sounds, pro-trans. It seems like he says, okay, if you want to be trans, be trans. And if I'm at dinner with you, I'll refer to you to your correct gender. I won't go out of my way to refer to you by your biological sex. Bam. Everyone's on the same page. Trans people can go on and live like just regular people and do their own thing without facing scrutiny. Everything is perfectly balanced and at peace. Or so we thought, because, there's always going to be a shit stir in the group. So I'm about to pull up a small clip from What is a Woman that I took. And this clip has actually gone pretty viral. I think I saw it uploaded to YouTube multiple times. And I'm just going to go ahead and start here. I'm going to play it all the way through, and then we'll analyze what's going on in the scene piece by piece afterward.
Interactions would have to do with maleness or femaleness that would be.
I'm not even talking about social context. I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language of like getting to the truth. Again, in social life.
Why is that uncomfortable?
Because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me. And if you keep probing, we're gonna stop the interview.
If I probe about what the truth is?
You keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude. I'm saying to you...
How is the word truth condescending and rude?
Why don't you tell me what your truth is, and you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up.
What my truth is? Well, I don't think I really have a truth. I think that there's just the truth, like the reality. And so we should begin by trying to figure out what the reality is.
Uh-huh. And why are you concerned with when someone else tells you that they're a man, or even if they use the word male, why are you concerned with not believing them?
Well, you keep bringing it back to, how do you respond in a social situation?
But that's what I do. I'm a social scientist.
Okay, and we'll cut that right there. So now, as you can see, things got a little bit heated, and it seems that in that clip, the professor is meant to come off as irrational, crazy, easily triggered, disconnected from reality, quick to call people transphobic, not willing to talk about the truth. And here I pulled in this one video. It's got 594,000 views, and there's actually like several versions of this video. So here we see people's reactions. Ha, I'd be laughing so hard at their stupidity. Matt Walsh has the best poker face. Somebody's a professor with this level of intelligence? I applaud Matt for doing this. There's no way I would have the willpower to engage with people this disconnected from reality. See? They think he's disconnected from reality. Wow, the professor's demeanor is like a teenager who got caught doing something bad. Self-soothing by folding the arms. Okay, here we go. The expert on analyzing body language. It's hard to win an argument with a smart person, but it's damn near impossible to win an argument with a stupid person. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely meant to, the clip's definitely meant to get his audience going, showing this professor as irrational, angry. But let's kind of analyze this clip more deeply to really understand what's going on.
Interactions would have to do with maleness or femaleness that would be.
I'm not even talking about social context. I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth.
Okay, so from this conversation clip, we see the professors talking about social interactions, and Matt Walsh says, I'm not talking about social interactions. I just want to get to the truth. And so let's take a step back and look at the definition of gender, right, male or female sex, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. So we're looking at social and cultural differences rather than biological differences, right? Which is what this professor is explaining. Gender is a social construct. So when Matt Walsh responds, okay, but I don't want to talk about the social construct, I want the truth. The professor's confused because he's literally just explained to him that gender is a social construct, and Matt Walsh wants to talk about a social construct without considering the social aspect. So if we go to this clip, the professor's like really thinking hard right here. What the hell's going on? You could put the Windows loading logo from your mouse on here because he's really thinking about what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language of like getting to the truth. Again, in social life.
Why is that uncomfortable?
Because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me. And if you keep probing, we're gonna stop the interview.
If I probe about what the truth is?
Okay, so here we have Matt Walsh trying to play innocent. If I probe about what the truth is, okay. So as we were saying, the professor just goes, "Okay, I'm actually really uncomfortable." So he's kind of expressing how he feels. Like, "Hey, I'm actually kind of uncomfortable with this language." He's trying to give Matt the benefit of the doubt for a second there, saying, "Look, man, I'm not trying to accuse you of anything, but I'm kind of uncomfortable with you using the truth, and it's because when he's explaining, okay, look, gender is different than sex, and a woman is someone who identifies as a woman, and the guy's saying, okay, but what is the truth? Trying to say, okay, this is all bogus, and transgenderism is bogus. It's kind of implied, although not said outright, and the professor's kind of picking up on that. Hence why he says, I'm uncomfortable with that. And then Matt Walsh goes on to say, why is that uncomfortable? And the professor says, okay, well, it kind of sounds deeply transphobic because, as I just explained, it's kind of implying that the whole thing is bogus, transgenderism is bogus. So then he does go on to say, it actually sounds deeply transphobic. He's at this point, he's like, okay, this guy's clearly trying to wind me up. Although he can't put it in those terms, particularly because he's on the spot.
You keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude. I'm saying to you...
How is the word truth condescending and rude?
Okay, so here he goes on to explain, hey, you keep using the word truth, which is condescending and rude, and Matt's asking, okay, why? How? Okay, so let's jump in. Okay, so this professor explains the difference between sex and gender, and he gets the response, okay, but what is the truth? And by responding that way, Matt is kind of putting forward an argument, wittingly or unwittingly, and that response kind of has a hidden premise. So when the professor says sex and gender are separate concepts, gender is a social construct, and you can identify as the gender of your choosing if you really feel that way, if you really want to identify as that. if you identify with uh, traditional aspects of a certain gender, go for it. And he goes into this long, detailed answer. And in the first part of this video, I, I included the clip where he plays music over the professor giving him a nice long explanation, which we as the audience don't get to hear. And the response is, okay, but what is the truth? The hidden premise there is, if someone asks you what the truth is after you give them a response, their hidden premise is what you said is not the truth. And to make it more complicated, and I don't think the professor, since he's in the moment, he can't really kind of break down exactly what's happening. There's not only a hidden premise, but by responding this way, Matt Walsh also doesn't explain why he disagrees. So while the professor is trying to have a good faith argument, trying to say, okay, yeah, I'm glad you asked this. Look, here's sex, here's gender. And he's explaining what a woman is through the lens of gender as a social construct and people being able to identify as a woman. Matt Walsh is essentially responding, what is the truth? And he's not explaining why he disagrees with this. He's not actually adding anything to the conversation. He's just disagreeing without fully disagreeing, or he's not outright saying you're wrong, I disagree. Like that would be a step forward though, because then the professor could ask, okay, why do you disagree? Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can resolve the differences. We'll both present ideas back and forth, have a discussion, have an argument, and then maybe we can arrive at the same truth together. But instead of doing that, Matt Walsh simply says, okay, but what's the truth? And by doing this, Matt doesn't have to present his ideas either, which another thing that happens if you do that is he kind of shields himself from being proven wrong. So if Matt Walsh were to say his truth, which I'm assuming is this, sex equals gender, male, and there's only male, female, then he would open himself up to the professor saying, okay, I hear that, but here's why you're wrong. So that's what's going on in this conversation. And it's kind of hard to pick up, especially if you're in the moment. But, since we can actually sit back and analyze exactly what's happening, we can break it down. So let's keep going here.
Why don't you tell me what your truth is? And you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up.
What my truth is? Well, I don't think I really have a truth. I think that there's just the truth, like the reality. And so we should begin by trying to figure out what the reality is.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so here we have something. So Matt Walsh clearly isn't trying to have a conversation. But now the professor actually does a smart thing. It's actually very smart that he asked him, okay, what is your truth? Because as I said, Matt Walsh has disagreed without explicitly disagreeing. And obviously, if you don't explicitly disagree, you don't explain why, or, give the other person the chance to explain why you might be wrong, or you don't even give them the chance to learn why they might be wrong. So he asks him, okay, what's your truth? What do you think the truth is? He tries to have a conversation, and Matt Walsh says, okay, I don't think I have a truth. I think there is just the truth. So he's clearly not looking to have a constructive conversation. And if you're giving someone a long answer and they're just going to stonewall you like Matt Walsh is doing in this video, like it's honestly a waste of time to try to argue. So the professor says, "Hey, you got 30 more seconds before I walk out." And honestly, that's fine. Like I think that was a good thing to say because Matt Walsh clearly isn't going to engage in a good faith argument. The only